Hi everyone, it's me Oля here. You're welcome to my channel. In this video, just like I promised in my previous one, we are going to talk about adverbs and how to make comparative and superlative degrees of Ukrainian adverbs. Just like most of the adjectives, most of adverbs of manner, because they derive from adjectives, have comparative and superlative. We can always say that somebody is running quickly, but somebody else is running quicklier or less quickly, more quickly or less quickly. And there would be this someone that amongst all people is running the most quickly, right? And we can say that somebody's playing their music loudly and somebody else is playing more loudly. And there would be always, that someone who is playing their music the most loudly. And that could be quite annoying sometimes, especially when you are in the mood to sleep. In Ukrainian, just like in English, adverbs have comparative and superlative degrees. And as I said in my previous video, which was on adverbs, many of them come from adjectives. They are derived from adjectives. They look very similar to adjectives. They have exactly the same stem that adjective has. They just keep their own ending. So, for instance, if we have an adjective швидкий, quick, we will have an adverb швидко, quickly. Дорогий, an adjective, expensive, but expensively, an adverb would be дорого. So you see, the difference is the ending. That's it. It looks exactly the same. Also, these adverbs of manner, are copying the rules of adjective. They behave exactly the same that adjectives do when it comes to comparative and superlative, only they keep the rule for adjective, only keep their own ending. So if you know the rules of making comparative and superlative for adjectives, you should not have any problems with doing the same thing to adverbs. So let us begin with comparative. In Ukrainian, we will have two ways of making comparative, and the first way is by adding suffix. Exactly same suffixes that we used for adjectives. Sh, ish, they are the most common ones, or zch or sh. These ones we use rarely, and later I will explain you when do you use them. So we take our adverb, give it one of these suffixes, the one that's appropriate for this one, and change the ending from O to A. Sometimes the adverb itself will have an ending M, so if that's the case, then you don't need to change anything. As I said, the most common ones are suffixes sh and ish. Let's see how do we make comparative using those. So голосно, loudly, will become голосніше. See what we done there? We added suffix ish and changed ending o to ending e. Голосно, голосніше. Quietly, тихо. More quietly, тихіше. We removed o. We added suffix ish and changed ending from o to e. Тихо, тихіше. Carefully, обережно. More carefully, обережніше. Effective, ефективно, but more effective, ефективніше. Smartly, розумно. More smartly, розумніше. Сумно, sadly, more sadly, сумніше. Now, if an adverb itself already has suffixes like k, ek, ok, we must remove them before adding sh or ish. Далеко has suffix ek, we must remove it, and we will have дальше. Далеко, дальше. Deeply, глибоко has suffix ok, we must remove it, so глибоко becomes глибше after we add sh and change ending from o to e. Now, when do we use zch? We use suffix zch instead of sh only if the stem of the adverb ends in g or z. For instance, дорого, remove ending o, the stem would be дорог. Do you see? You see it ends in h, so we use suffix жч. Дорого becomes дорожче. Expensive, more expensive. Дорого, дорожче. Nearly, близько, near, близько. Близько has suffix k. We must remove it and we will have stem bliz ends z. Therefore we use suffix жч. So we will have ближче. Близько, nearly, but more nearly, ближче. And if the stem ends in s, we will use suffix щ. For instance, високо, highly, has suffix ок, which we must remove. We will be left with the stem вис. It ends in s, therefore our suffix would be щ. So, високо, highly, but more highly, higher will be вище. Високо, вище. So this was one way of making adverbs comparative by adding suffixes. You can also, just like for adjectives, use way number 2. For way number 2, you must use Ukrainian equivalents of more or less. Exactly the same thing that you would do in English, to say more expensively or less expensively, more effectively or less effectively. Reminding you that Ukrainian equivalent of more is більш. Більш means more, and менш means less. So, for instance, interestingly, цікаво, more interestingly, більш цікаво, less interestingly, менш цікаво. Effectively, efficiently, more efficiently, більш ефективно, less efficiently, менш ефективно. So, for instance, hopefully tomorrow we will work more efficiently than yesterday. So, сподіваюсь, завтра ми попрацюємо більш ефективно, ніж вчора. Now let us talk about superlative. Superlative we use when we are talking about some kind of extreme characteristic of a action, of a verb. So to say that something is done the most effectively or the least effectively, or something is done the most smartly or intelligently, or the least smartly or the least intelligently, or the most effectively or the least effectively. In Ukrainian, there also will be two ways of making superlative. The first way of making superlative adverb in Ukrainian is by taking a superlative adverb and adding a prefix най to it. The prefix най in Ukrainian has this very extreme strong meaning. To say that something is най something means that it's either the most or the least. So, the most highly, вище plus prefix най, найвище, найвище. Вище means more highly, найвище, the most highly. The most quickly, найшвидше, найшвидше, the most quickly. Quicklier will be швидше, the most quickly, найшвидше. The hardest, the most hard, найважче, важче, harder, but the hardest, the most hard, найважче. The most easily, найлегше, найлегше. The most importantly. Найважливіше. Найважливіше. Or we can go another way, use the second way of making superlative in Ukrainian. It is by using Ukrainian equivalents of English, the most and the least. So Ukrainian equivalent for the most is найбільш, and for the least найменш. The most найбільш, the least найменш. However, in this case, we don't use superlative, we use the basic, the positive form of an adverb. For instance, the most importantly, найбільш важливо. The least importantly, найменш важливо. The most surely, найбільш впевнено. The least surely, найменш впевнено. The most interestingly, найбільш цікаво, or the least interestingly, найменш цікаво. The most productively, найбільш продуктивно, or the least productively, найменш продуктивно. However, there is another bonus, I would say, way of making superlative in Ukrainian. It's not something you need to learn how to make, but it's easy. You will just take already ready superlative form with the prefix най, найважливіше, найглибше, найдовше, найголосніше. And even before that prefix най, you attach a prefix як or що. In that case, prefixes як and що are interchangeable. It doesn't really matter which one you prefer to use. This way you will have якнайдальше, якнайглибше, що найефективніше, якнайрозумніше, якнайкраще, якнайгірше, якнайкрасивіше, and so on. It kind of, I feel like, gives even more extreme meaning. So, я хотіла б поїхати звідси якнайдальше. I would like to get out of here as far as I can, the furthest. Or we would like to organize everything the most intelligently, in the most intelligent way it's possible. Ми хотіли б організувати все якнайрозумніше. Найгірше, the worst, but що найгірше, or якнайгірше, the worst it can be. So, you did it as bad as it could be. You did it the worst. Ви зробили це якнайгірше. Again, you can survive in Ukraine perfectly without using this one. But I just felt like I need to give this information to you just in case you meet a word like that and then get confused. What is this що or як prefix doing here with this superlative adverb? And you will know what it means. You won't be confused. And of course, our favorite part, exceptions. There always will be a couple of adverbs that don't want to behave, they don't want to follow the rules and they behave differently. Well, добре, краще, найкраще. Well, better, the best. Badly, погано, гірше, найгірше. Many, much, багато, більше, найбільше. Мало, менше, найменше. Okay, now I will give you a small list of adverbs, and it will be your homework to practice and make them comparative and superlative.